You sign the contract. You tell the world you're doing it. Then you sit in a hotel room, staring at a mountain road that has already killed 16 people, and you realize you're not going. Two of NASCAR's biggest champions did exactly that. Both men signed. Both men backed out before a single lap. Only one driver actually showed up, and what happened to him tells you everything. Two champions. A mountain that kills. And only one of them actually showed up. Here's where the names come in. A Daytona 500 champion driving for Team Penske, and a 2021 Cup Series champion, both agreed to race at Australia's Adelaide Grand Final. But before either of them, another name had already signed a year earlier, back in 2024, Kyle Busch. He's the one who actually went through with it. Two backed out. One didn't. And the one who didn't win. He barely survived the corners. To understand why two champions ran, you need to understand what they were running from. Mount Panorama, at Bathurst, isn't a purpose-built racetrack. It's a public road with a 60 km/h speed limit, enforced by police 51 weeks a year. Since 1938, 16 competitors have died there, including a Formula One world champion who suffered a fatal heart attack mid-race. The circuit runs 6.213 kilometers, with a 174-meter elevation change and gradients as steep as 1 in 6. It wasn't even designed as a racetrack. It was built as a Great Depression unemployment project under Mayor Martin Griffin. The machines make the danger worse. NASCAR's next-gen car weighs 3,200 pounds, produces 670 horsepower, and uses soft body construction built to absorb wall impacts. The Supercar's Gen 3 car weighs 2,940 pounds, produces 600 horsepower, runs a manual gearbox, and uses a spool differential, a locked rear axle that fights the driver through every corner. Its body is stiff, never engineered to touch a wall. On a NASCAR oval, a spin finds grass. At Bathurst, a spin finds concrete. Before we go further into how brutal this track really is, let's take a quick pause. This channel, NASCAR Track Report, is closing in on 500 subscribers, and we're almost there together. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, hitting subscribe, dropping a like, and leaving a comment genuinely helps this channel keep bringing you real, fact-checked NASCAR stories like this one. Your support matters more than you'd think in keeping content like this coming. Now, back to the mountain itself, because the corners have their own body count. The cutting saw a collision between Marcos Ambrose and Greg Murphy in 2005. McPhillamy Park, a blind crest, sent Alan Moffat headfirst into the wall in 1986, and when Percy crashed at nearly the same spot a year later. Griffin's Bend produced a fiery crash in 2011. At Quarry Corner, Dick Johnson's car was destroyed by a dislodged rock while he was leading the race in 1980. Conrod Strait was so dangerous that officials carved the chase chicane into it in 1987, following a driver's death. And at Forest's Elbow, Chaz Mostert suffered a wall-to-wall crash at 170 km/h in 2015, with 7 marshals caught in the wreckage. Mostert himself called it the biggest hit of his entire career. Against that backdrop, one of the two champions actually showed up. Tickford Racing CEO Rody Brookhouse called the addition to the grid an extraordinary wildcard entry. Going in, the driver himself said, "I've been a fan of the Supercars Championship since I was a kid." That driver was Austin Cindric. The result was a rain-soaked weekend. Cindric finished 21st and 23rd in a 25-car field, competing against full-time Supercars professionals. Afterward, he offered his own verdict, saying his first race was wet and that's kind of the extent of it, later adding he was mildly satisfied but wanted to keep improving. Here's what makes that result sting more. Cindric had daily coaching from Scott McLaughlin, and Shane van Gisbergen himself reviewed his data. And this was at Adelaide, a flatter, gentler circuit than Bathurst itself. Even with that support system, a Cup Series champion-level talent still finished in the 20s. Now to the two who ran. Kyle Busch lined up for a 2024 Adelaide wildcard entry, then quietly withdrew, citing an off-track commitment. Kyle Larson confirmed his own interest and was scheduled for the 2025 Adelaide Grand Final. He withdrew right after crashing out of both the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day. Journalist Adam Stern reported the withdrawal, stating that Larson had pulled out of a planned Supercars debut at the Adelaide Grand Final. Now flip the story around, because the reverse trip makes the contrast impossible to ignore. Shane van Gisbergen crossed into NASCAR in July 2023 through Trackhouse Project 91 program, and won the Chicago Street Course in his Cup Series debut. He became the first driver to win on debut in 60 years, since Johnny Rutherford in 1963. Van Gisbergen himself said, "No, of course not, but you always dream of it," when asked if he expected the result. He followed that debut with 5 rookie wins in 2025, the most in NASCAR history, making him the most successful non-American-born driver in Cup Series history. And here's the line that should sting. Van Gisbergen said he'd have loved to see Kyle Busch try a supercar, and believed Busch would have done well if he took it seriously. So look at where that leaves things. One road racer walked into NASCAR and won immediately, on debut, against a full-time field. 2 NASCAR champions wouldn't even show up to try the reverse. The one who did show up got beaten by a 25-car field, in the rain, on the easier of the 2 circuits. So what does that actually tell us about who the real best drivers in the world are? Because the mountain never lied to anybody. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, drop a comment with who you think would have actually survived Bathurst, and share it with another NASCAR fan who needs to see this. And if you enjoy real NASCAR breakdowns like this, you'll like what's coming next.